Oh,
Yo.
what's going on?
Oh, just managing the oil trade.
Managing the oil trade.
You know, the big news, of course, this year besides bonds has been the dollar, the US dollar gaining incredible amounts against most major currencies, near 2011 highs right now on the Dixie. That would be the dollar index that tracks the dollar against a basket of currencies. And the general rule is if the dollar is up, commodities go down. And while I've had a rough year in the S&P, my best play this year has been shorting oil at 120 bucks. I was looking for $78 to $80. We actually just hit 79.17 on oil after being as high as 120. So I am talking in my Discord about how I'm going to now move out of that short and actually look to start to get long energy for a $110 price target into the first quarter of next year. So just managing a little oil trade because as markets open here, just down across the board, absolutely poleaxed because of macro conditions.
Yeah, it's
oil
not pretty out there.
No.
What?
It is
down 1% on the S&P already.
Yeah, and you know, we just opened. It was the futures were pointing much lower overnight, and we're now critical support. We're at 37.17 on the S&P right now, and the low for the year is 36.36. So we are right there sniffing near the lows, especially given the volatility wouldn't be wouldn't take much to get us down there. I think that even if we did push towards those lows, we're probably due for a relief bounce. So if you haven't sold yet, I probably wouldn't sell now. That said, we are decidedly bearish on the trends, and I wouldn't look to open new swing longs until we can get above some pretty tough resistance, which is different for each instrument, and we can go over. I would say ETH actually holding up surprisingly well compared to macro markets, but people have been noticing a lag between ETH, that ETH either leads or lags the S&P when the S&P makes a move. And that may have to do with some technical market making that happens on the back end and how market makers in both the S&P 500 and ETH respond to each other, specifically the ETH market makers. So we're gonna see. It's looking bearish out there right now, but I think we're close to a low.
Yeah, one can only hope. I don't know how much more bad news we can really get. I mean, there's some obvious stuff with the macro situations. We'll get into that in a second. Just want to say GM to everybody tuning in. Hermano, Rocket Piece. Are you guys going to talk about the Sugandis NFT series? I don't know, Free Market, you want to take that one?
I have never been as bullish on an NFT collect. No, I've never heard of Sugandis. Please put up a link for their Twitter so we could check them out. And
I think the response to that is Sugandis nuts.
Oh.
I thought you knew where that was going. There we go.
I didn't know it.
Yeah, I got him.
No, it sounded like one of the waifu NFT projects. So I've been got.
It took a second.
But you didn't get R2.
Yeah, NFTs are a joke. So are you. Yeah. Bro, you didn't actually get us. It's all good. How you been, man? How was your week?
It was good. Can't complain. It was nice. We had a great terrestrial Thursday with Deluxe Bear. Do you remember when Bears Deluxe was hot?
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten. They got up to 3 ETH.
You know what it was? How much?
3 ETH.
Yeah, I thought it was even up to 5, but I think you're right. It was 3, and they kind of minted around the anonymice type of model. Like it was going to be the next anonymice.
Yeah.
I want to say when they minted, it had a similar vibe, very tech focused devs, and yeah, they really had a moment there and sitting at a 0.16 floor right now, which is better than a lot of NFT collections that minted around the same time. That was a great conversation about P2E and NFTs in general.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we ended up getting in touch with them and making that space happen. Just it's great to get a chance to talk to these founders who are still doing stuff in the space many months later after they mint, because honestly, that's not the trend these days anymore, right? Like the soft rugs are left, right, and center at this point. Kind of as I mentioned on the Terrestrial Thursday, and we've talked about it on the show a lot too. Is when you go start kicking the tires and seeing what's going on in these communities and seeing if they're still active and still building and whatnot, pretty surprising how many of them are just essentially ghost towns or just the community left. And one of the hard things is, and this is why I always cautioned against the idea of holder only chat, is because the chat ends up congregating in the holder only area, and from somebody coming from the outside looking in, the place looks just absolutely, you know, like a barren wasteland, right? And it doesn't exist. And I don't think that that's a good front to put out to people that are potentially going to buy your NFT or potentially want to see what your community is all about. To each their own, of course. But yeah, a lot of these discords that I've hopped into, or even just messaging the Twitter accounts or the people running the Twitter accounts, like it's pretty evident that a lot of people have just kind of fled the scene. But I do think for those of us that are still out here working on stuff and engaging and in doing stuff like Terrestrial Thursdays, and the people that are joining us, like I think that it's only a matter of time before everyone gets their moment again.
For years, I'd even say millennia, soft rugs were a desirable thing. You wanted your rugs soft. It was comfortable. It was what you needed in your house.
Shag
Now
rugs, yeah.
it's just something else that Web3 and NFTs have taken from us, along with half the environment. So
Bring back the shag carpets is all I'm hearing. I used to have an area rug. It was nice. I liked it. Maybe I'll go get another one. I don't know, man. I have a wedding to go to today, so I'm very excited about that. Tomorrow, might not be so excited about it, but should be a good time.
Wouldn't it be? I picture it like Wedding Crashes, where they sit you at the kids' table, and it's just you like entertaining like a bunch of kids, and then you send one over to one of the bridesmaids, like, "Hey, go give her this note."
Yeah.
That's the move.
Have you kids heard of cryptocurrency?
Can you kids say gamble?
Yeah.
Gamble.
Perfect. Degen. You miss Toronto, R2. I'm not from Toronto. I'm from the area, but I don't spend a ton of time there. I love Toronto, but I'm still
Toronto R2 sounds like when you get wild, like, oh, don't mess with Toronto R2.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Ontario R2 is very polite, but Toronto R2, no.
Yeah, great city though. Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on there. All right, let's get into the conversation here, and we'll bring up the markets. Despite at the beginning of the show saying that everything was looking grim, ETH is up 2% on the day. That was obviously after a really dramatic pullback yesterday. So, we're kind of just in like a weird zone where that number will flip very dramatically based on the hours that pass. But other than that, yeah, down 12% on the week, down 4% for Bitcoin. It's dropped below the $19,000 mark. ETH is hanging around at 1,300. A lot of people saying that we're going to see those 3 digits again. I would not be surprised to see that too, especially with the way that the macro conditions are, and the Fed seems to be really kind of continuing to be aggressive to slow inflation down. But I also saw a lot of speculation that the next inflation print should be dramatically lower as energy prices really start to return to normal. And if you own a car, I think that it's safe to say that has been the case. I don't know. What are you feeling about crypto and in the markets right now?
Luckily, it's a very, very easy decision, especially if you're talking about ETH. $1,250, which is where ETH got to roughly during the pullback. And, you know, I wrote in my Substack an entire article about sell the news and how it's almost impossible. At the end of the article, I listed a whole thing of bullish reasons why you should be bullish. And the conclusion was still sell the news is going to win. And you're going into the merge. You have to sell the news effect, and then you're going to combine it with a surprise negative macro backdrop. Well, ETH gets absolutely pummeled. We fell to 1250, and we have tried to muster a bounce here. We even got up to 1400, I think yesterday or the day before, and now we are in this 1250 to 1400 range. Like I said, this is an easy decision for traders. If we lose 1250, we're going back to the lows, 800, 900. And as you know, I am a fan of ABCD wave theory, and we are in an ABCD negative wave, which would resolve at exactly $838, which is about $50 underneath the low of where ETH was. So it's not guaranteed that it has to get there. And I'll tell you, with the way macro markets are lining up, they're setting themselves up for a relief rally. It's one of these things, and I've said this a few times, okay? If in your mind you look around, you know, you've been in a position for a while, or you've been watching a trend for a while, and you think to yourself, man, everything is so bullish, what could go wrong? Sell. I don't care if you can't figure out what could go wrong. That's what you need to sell. And the same is true on the downside. Right now, there is no bullish scenario. It's like there is no avenue you can get your mind down to say where things are going to get better. That is invariably where markets like to turn around. So even if it's a relief bounce, like I said earlier in the show, if you haven't sold yet, I wouldn't panic sell here. But if we're talking about ETH, you have some very defined risk. If we get under that 1250 level, like it's the last day of the week, okay? If we close under 1250 tomorrow when the actual weekly close happens on crypto, then I would say that the lows are almost all but guaranteed. Whether we undercut them, we'll have to see where everything is. If we can hold this 1250 and macro markets turn around as they are poised to do either next week or the week after, I think 1250 will hold, and we're probably right back up to 1600. I had put out a note talking about 1595 kind of being our last ditch support. And once we got under that, you needed to abandon all longs and even go short if you were bearish bias and inclined to. So until we get back over that 1600, you have to favor selling the rips if you're trading.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of not selling or buying right now. It really does feel like we're just in the middle of that range that it's bouncing between, and like you could get left in the dust either way. But I do think we do have a little bit more down to go before we can kind of reset. I'm not stabling up here. I mean, the play was to obviously do that at 1700, 1600, 2000 if you were feeling like the merge was an absolute sell the news event. And as it turned out, it was. The merge was a little bit like New Year's, kind of, right? Like there was this big countdown, everyone's gearing up for it. It happens, everyone cheers this, toasts, and then like an hour later, it's just like, what now? Well, it's just another year, right? You know, so
I have
you wake up the
noticed
next morning and it's
prices.
business as usual.
I have noticed gas prices have been higher than normal post-merge. And I don't mean that gas has run at higher GWE. I mean that the cost to do actions in games, as an example, at the same GWE costs more US dollars now than it did before the merge. So if I do an action,
the function of ETH price, though, it's not the
yes, but I'm just it's not the merge's fault per se. It's that the games and stuff that were written on the old thing have not changed. All they would have to do is change their code and it would line up correctly. The game itself is charging you more than it should because it hasn't changed its software for the merge yet. So I obviously the myth of lower gas prices post-merge was popped, or at least people tried to pop it, even though I think even some people, it still didn't quite get through to them.
I don't think it was ever intended to be like, we're going to flip the switch and all of the sudden it's going to be a lot better. It's just that this is
Right.
going to be a mechanism that will allow it to get a lot better, right?
But let's just look at it from a technical level, right? Everybody bought going into the merge and everybody sold coming out of the merge. Fine, it's a wash. Round trip it, who gives a shit? Right now, we're going to find out whether that whole supply crisis thing is true. Obviously, that there was the trading liquidity on both sides of the tape that has now been sucked up by algos. Okay. We are going to see how much that whole buy sell imbalance now flipping in ETH favors matters. I'm not saying it's going to come to fruition over the next week, but we're going to find out how true that is or how much it even matters, right? Because if you have all the staked ETH and you have all the Gwei that's burned, but then you have all the people who didn't stake the ETH and can just keep selling it. So we're going to see where exactly fair price for ETH lands. But as we've been talking about all year, it really has a lot to do with macro and interest rates. So that's where we're going to get our clue, I think, not from the crypto market itself.
It does feel like that sell pressure, if you haven't staked, could start to dry up, especially with, I have this article pulled up here, but as expected, Ethereum token issuance plummets 95% following the merge. So the ultrasound money meme is taking life, but that minor sell pressure is all but gone at this point. And then of course, everything that's been staked into the network is going to be locked up. It has successfully, basically shed the this is bad for the environment narrative. So there's a lot of good that is lining up here. It was just never going to be an immediate pop. Now, again, you can make the argument that the macro has just kind of smacked it back down too. And I do think that there's a lot of that in play. I got really excited for, maybe the potential that this was going to be off to the races once we saw that Bitcoin was going on that tear in the absence of any good news for the Bitcoin network. But that was very short-lived. And Bitcoin actually holding up pretty well through this drop. But yeah.
Well, we managed to just talk ETH under 1,300 while we were sitting here jawboning. And I'll say this, as bearish as I've sounded in the early part of this show, right now, the higher EV trade is going to be getting long at 1250 because it's very defined risk. If you lose 1250, you easily get out of the trade, but otherwise it's hard support. So if it works as it should, that's a good low. We're at 1280 right now. So again, figuring out what your own bias is the key, right? Because you have risk ranges where ETH will probably break this way if it goes above or break this way if it goes below. So you define your risk range. Then you have to figure out where your bias lands. Am I bullish right now? Do I think macro conditions or conditions of my coin are going to be bullish over the next month or two? If that lines up with the support, then hey, this is a great place to buy. If you're the opposite, if you're sitting here going, nope, macro's not going to get better, everything's going to tank, what you would do is maybe lighten your short up at 1250, and then you would wait for a little bounce and reload. So that's kind of how you look at the ranges, right? You figure out where your bias is, and then you trade off the range. It's not like one level is an automatic this or that. You have to factor in other things, and that's what your bias is. So.
I'm going to pull up this article here, and I actually didn't bring it up to you in the pre-show, but I'm not sure if you saw that. Did you see, and this is off the back of that Ian Bellina, the crypto influencer lawsuit. He got paid $5 million to shill an ICO back in 2018, and he's about to pay the price pretty hard for it. But the SEC claims that all Ethereum falls under U.S. jurisdiction. And I think that this is something that they were maybe waiting on for proof of stake to actually kick in, because the argument is that 45% of all Ethereum transactions are validated on nodes that operate within the United States. Of course, now with Coinbase's holdings and switching to proof of stake model, there's a huge concentration of ETH within an American-based publicly traded company, and now the SEC is going after basically all of crypto, saying that this is our domain now, and the rest of the world basically can bow to our ruling. What is your gut knee jerk reaction to that?
I don't think that ETH is regulatable, right? So I think that their best chance for them is to posture and scare people, which is kind of what they're doing, because that may be the case now, but were the government to become too oppressive or too interventionist in relation to cryptocurrency, ETH specifically, you would see people move to Singapore. You would see people move elsewhere. And I don't mean individuals who are owning ETH or TRIB, but the companies who, through this whole bear market, quote unquote, have been receiving massive amounts of investments to continue to build out back-end blockchain infrastructure, they're going to go where it's friendly. So I think that the government is always going to talk much bigger than they have to, because that's how you negotiate. It does not surprise me that they did this. We will see how much of it falls under U.S. jurisdiction when all is said and done. Remember, the SEC also answers to Congress, and Congress people can be bought off. This is how our system, I mean, it's a little crude of me to say that, but
yeah, and
it's
you're not necessarily
like
saying like envelopes of money under the table, but like
no,
they
it's
have
lobbying.
donors that they have to appease,
Right.
and people that
Lobbyists.
their constituents and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's one of those balance things, right? So much money has entered crypto for the second year in a row now. We are the largest lobbying effort in Congress. That's bigger than the medical industry. That's bigger than the cannabis industry, who are two of the other people spending a lot of money to lobby laws in their favor. Crypto's number one right now. And, that money is good. It's a good use of capital, in my opinion, to be putting it towards getting senators on your side. Because no matter how, the SEC can advise Congress on what laws to make. They make their own rules in a certain sense. But again, this is going to fall on Congress. And I think that more and more Congress is going to become friendlier to crypto, as it both appeases their constituents and their donors.
Yeah, I almost wondered if this was like an SEC move to like be the regulatory body for crypto before another one can be formed, because that was always an idea and something that's being lobbied for, saying that cryptocurrency and these Web3 concepts need their own regulation because they fill such a different, technological void. They operate so differently. And one of these legacy commissions, these legacy regulatory bodies, doesn't really have the capacity to effectively regulate on both of them. And once the proof of stake hit, they all of a sudden like, well, looks like a security to us now, and so that might as well be ours. Like, I was just wondering, like, I just kind of thought that it was just like maybe them trying to protect.
I think the most bearish threat to crypto are government-backed stablecoins, right? Because I would argue right now, stablecoins are more important to crypto than Bitcoin, okay? Bitcoin and ETH are confusing, all right? Bitcoin and ETH are levels of obfuscation, because when you use those to invest in shitcoins or altcoins or other things, your brain has to do a lot of math to figure out what your investment is worth, because you are first buying a currency that's volatile and then investing it in another volatile instrument, right? So you have double the volatility. Stablecoin, one phenomenon I started to see in June was shitcoins on ETH launching with USDC and USDT pairs as opposed to ETH pairs. They weren't pairing themselves with WETH. They were pairing themselves with... And I said to myself, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Why don't shitcoins just pair themselves to USDT or USDC going forward? And then you don't have to worry about, I'm still down in ETH terms, or I'm up in ETH terms, or whatever. That is what I would say is the biggest threat to the status quo. So what we understand is how crypto goes. Stablecoins are very important and arguably the best crypto instrument we have. And if governments come out with their own stable coin, what does that do? That to me is I'm not worried about regulation. I'm worried about competition.
Yeah, fair enough. What else we got here? Let's talk about the Fidenza sweep that happened yesterday. Someone moving into the Tyler Hobbs collection in a big way, sweeping up almost 700 ETH of Fidenzas in the course of a couple of minutes. And there was a lot of speculation. What's that?
$800 now? What is that? $800 worth of Fidenzas?
Yeah, we're talking. Yeah, maybe 1,000. I'm not sure. But oh god, why is this happening?
1266. What, you just look at the ETH price?
No, my one of the pages was not responsive. Yeah,
everyday need. Why?
Are we dropping again? No,
we literally nailed it. We nailed the time. We were like, don't buy 1308. 1250 is the support. We're almost there.
There we go.
Buy 1250 now. Take a lark on this Friday. Fuck it. What else do you have this Friday? You ain't got no job and you ain't got shit to do. Let's leverage 10x here at 1250. Why not?
Well, I mean, we have to talk about how generative art has a very important place in NFTs, and it's been a while since there's been a high amount of focus on generative art, but it has slowly and quietly really been doing its thing. I mean, Chromie Squiggles, which is one that you're incredibly bullish on, has gone from 5 ETH all the way up to I think 11 or 12 ETH right now. Fidenza,
the first art block.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be importance in that, right? And like the idea of digitally generated art through algorithm and interaction with the blockchain is going to be a historical thing, especially for the early ones. As now that we see, how big AI art is coming into a big way, right? There's going to be a big focus on these types of things. There was a lot of speculation that this was a wallet that belonged to the Museum of Modern Art. As it was pointed out, though, MoMA, or probably not MoMA, the wallet owns 110 loot NFTs that were purchased at an average of around 3 ETH. So maybe, but I don't know if MoMA is degen trading loot back at its highs. So
yeah. It was actually quite the impressive portfolio. If you checked it out, it was like 25% punks, X% art blocks. It was like 30% squigs, 20, whatever. So this was I think you brought up an interesting point where people were speculating, is it MoMA? Because we had just had an article last week stating that MoMA was going to sell Renoirs and Monets to buy NFTs, which must have blown the head off of any trad art person who read that article. And people, I guess, were already speculating that this was MoMA. Maybe the loot suggests that it is not. At the same time, were you going to front run this idea? It's not exactly this news comes out and I'm going to flip this for a few ETH type of play. It's, when MoMA does go shopping, Art Blocks is going to be right at the top of the list, right? And it's going to be the Grails.
Art Blocks has already made it. Maybe not every single one, and definitely not the playgrounds and whatnot, but the Fidenzas and the Chromies and the Ringers and all of that stuff. I mean, like, they are the historical art in this space.
Right. And while there's no guarantees in life or investing, art, very, very high-end art like Van Gogh's tends to always go up. Though, to be fair, we don't get to see the floor price of a Van Gogh right after the hammer hits on the gavel. So we don't know if maybe it falls 50 ETH right away after that person buys the Van Gogh.
Yeah, but they just won an auction. They paid high for it, right? Like
right. So, invariably, if you tried to necessarily sell it immediately after, maybe the price would be less. But I think that we know where MoMA is going to be focusing their efforts, right? Traditional crypto art, the stuff that was around before the PFP boom happened, Art Blocks, the really high-end generative art. So if you're in a position in life where you're looking for real long-term investments, we're talking 3, 5, 10 years, I don't think you'd have a much sounder or safer place to park money than a Fidenza or a Ringer. I mean, it would have to be a Grail, of course, but fine art, it's one of those things, just like wine. It's just one of those things that we're always making new rich people, and we're never making enough fine art and good wine to keep up with that. And it's really just a supply and demand issue, right? So the idea of front-running MoMA, it's not a bad idea, but it's a very long-term thought, and you probably got to be sitting on a lot of capital because they're going to be buying the grails, right? They're going to be buying the high-end collection.
Yeah, I mean, by proximity and exposure, that'll drive the price of the rest of them up, right? But it's, yeah, I mean, when we talk about long-term plays, in this space, long-term might mean 6 months to a year. But when you're talking about generative art and these legacy pieces, like 100%, you're talking like 10 to potentially 20 years or more, right? Like those things are going to be sitting in your wallet for a long, long time. And yeah, you could, I'm sure you could buy a Chromie squiggle for 10 ETH and probably sell it for 12 or 13 if it continues to climb up. But if is that what the objective is when it comes to buying this stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean,
There's
I'm
plenty
sure
of
you
better
could
opportunity being a degen on some of these other smaller cap projects that could potentially 2, 3, 10x over the course of a month or two, right?
Yeah, that said, the only thing holding back Squigs is their supply and education, because I think it's the next 100 ETH art blocks collection. I don't know how they sit at 10 ETH, but it is what it is.
Well, Kevin Rose, like if you listen to the Proof podcast, it's like it seems like it's all he talks about, right? Like, I also didn't know because he had Snowfro on the podcast. I didn't know that they're not all minted yet.
No, I think a lot of art blocks collections still have some unminted. I forget what the reason was, whether it was for artists or promotional reasons.
They belong to Snowfro, and it's up to his discretion to mint more to give to people. But I think the idea was that they remain unminted so that he can't handpick what he's giving to who. It's just like, I'm going to mint you one, and whatever pops out is what I'm giving you.
Nice.
And then he's got a certain allocation that he basically has said is like for his kids, like they'll be minted upon like him dying or whatever. Like, so definitely some holding back, but it was an interesting conversation because he said, what happens if one of those pops out to be like a hyper squiggle or a hyperchromie or whatever they're called. I'm not too in depth on the nuance of each type, but how does that affect the price of them? Because there's only, in some cases, only 12 of this type and 8 of that type, right?
Yeah.
This is quite an incredible profile or collection that the guy or girl that swept Fidenzas has, though. A lot of CryptoPunks, tons of Chromie squiggles, and tons of World of Women on top of the loot. I don't want to say I'm surprised, but if you want to talk about somebody who's clearly making long-term investments, World of Women seems to be deep in those bags, and paying 3 ETH for most of them. I wonder what those are at these days. 2.3. They held up pretty well. How high did they get? Were they up to 10?
10.
Was it that high? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Let's talk about Valhalla a little bit, because I think it's capturing a lot of attention in the NFT space and what they're doing. And I think that they're hitting a couple of niches very, very well and kind of in a big way. I listened to their town hall last night, and full disclosure, you are also on the allow list. Like, you got through the application.
I had a whole joke planned about, R2, something tells me these are going to 100 ETH. I'm not sure why. Go ahead.
Okay, well, if you're wondering why, no, I mean, we both got through the application process, so that's great. But now just kind of learning and listening to what they're planning on doing, it seems like there's a lot of ambition behind them, but they also have already raised, I think they said on the town hall, $13 million, led by, it was a well-known VC firm too, and I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but they
Andy Arts at Social Capital.
What's that?
Andy Arts at Social Capital?
No. But he might be in there in some way, shape, or form. He's always dabbling. Is it real money though? Yeah. No, it's not. It's all display money. So on top of the marketplace that they're kind of building, and obviously the NFT project, the PFPs that they're designing, I guess it turns out that this is the big focus of this is to build a Web3 based streaming platform. And my first initial reaction was just like, oh my God, that's such a tough space to get into. Twitch and YouTube have such a wide moat and such a big captive audience, as well as, we talk a lot about the fact that traditional gamers, I'm assuming there was one in here earlier, or maybe still watching, just fucking hate NFTs, right? Like, so, how is it going to work if the audience isn't necessarily there? What I really liked about what they said is how they're going after a highly incentivized model for the creators, because where the content is where people tend to go. And just on the back of Twitch really kind of dropping the ball on a lot of their streamers, banning a lot of stuff, really throwing the hammer down on things. And then YouTube kind of comes and goes through these phases of like whether they're pro or anti crypto or NFTs. Maybe there is just something there that if they chip away at the market share, 1% here, 1% there, kind of like X2Y2 and LooksRare is doing with OpenSea, you could wake up one day in 6 months, a year, 2 years, and all of a sudden you've got quite a strong platform. I also think that, the ability to interact with your audience and your supporters through NFTs has a lot of potential, like a lot of potential, even if they're free. And I think we're underestimating the value of free collectibles sometimes. I think that this is something that can work. And listening to them talk, I mean, they sounded organized. They sound like they have experience building things. They have a very clear objective in mind, even if they couldn't speak to a lot of the fine details. And it's going to be fascinating to watch and see how they actually execute on all of them. And I know that you've been, in this ecosystem. I don't know how much digging you've done or research you've done, but what is your kind of takeaway from all of these things?
There's one thing I've noticed about gamers. They are freedom lovers. I think, for lack of a better term, they do not want to be owned by anybody. And their perception right now is that they are owned by the gaming companies. They are constantly fighting for their freedom in many different ways, right? Like, don't take away this option from me, or you're taking too much money on this end, or you're doing this, which is predatory. There's a million things that gamers want changed. Their view right now is that NFTs are just a new master, that it's not different for them. This is just the next master to come along and own them and take their money, much like the current video game companies. So I think the spirit of decentralization actually speaks to the gaming community. I don't use Twitch a lot. I've never in my life watched a game streamed, with the exception of poker. I don't know if that can. I don't mean online poker. I mean real poker with whole cameras. I watched, and I know even now, because that was the world I came from in a previous decade, that poker stream, like online poker streaming, is huge. Watching these guys play, 10 table online poker is big. People love doing that type of stuff. So maybe there's something there. I think if we could define NFTs as being in certain metas and stuff you hear a lot about now, I think we're in a VC meta. We're in a meta where people who mint NFTs are looking to these projects to raise their money elsewhere except from them. So the fact that they have already raised a lot of VC money that they have behind them makes me think that at the very least their idea is viable, and people who somewhat know what they're doing are putting their money behind it. And I think that means it has a lot of potential. I mean, look at Digi Daigaku, right?
Yep.
Is that a 10 ETH project without the Binance investment? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, I mean an interesting conversation in and of itself, and I do have something that it was kind of iffy about talking about, not in a bad way, but just like if the time permitted. But it was just um, he has a proven track record of success, and he knows the right people in the Web 2, particularly mobile gaming. We're talking about Gabriel Layden now, of course. But yeah, I mean, you're right. He did a great job of like drawing attention in, and I recently listened to a podcast with him. It was really good. And he even admitted he came in a little hot into the scene, and in the midst of a bear market where a lot of people are down 80-90% on their investments, bursting into the scene, kicking the door down and telling everybody that they've been doing it wrong probably was a little bit too much salt in the wound. So I think he has kind of just toned it down a little bit and more trying to just be a part of it rather than breaking it. But there was a lot of really interesting stuff that he was talking about, including just onboarding people to crypto and particularly Ethereum through NFTs rather than that normal dynamic of you have to buy crypto and then you buy NFTs. It was a very interesting thought process, and I think that Valhalla, to go back to the initial point, can also operate on that, in that to watch the streaming platform, to interact with the content creators and whatnot, you won't have to have a crypto wallet. You won't have to own NFTs to be able to do it. You could still do it in the same way that you're accustomed to all the time, but if the streamer is playing and wants to issue a POAP or something, right? Like just, oh, you were here for this stream, or thanks for tuning into my 1-year anniversary of streaming, or my 300th consecutive stream, and issuing an NFT as a collectible that's free, that sits in your account and you can claim it. Or if these PFPs are customizable, which was implied, like maybe you can be wearing a shirt that says, the AM show on it or something like that. That could be tradable, right? But if it's free to be issued, now all of a sudden you have this NFT, you have this collectible. And then if you're not already in that space, you have to kind of figure out what to do with it. The next obvious step is, I sell it. Well, what do you sell it for? You sell it for ETH. Well, now I have this ETH. What do I do? Oh, I got to open a Coinbase account. I got to download MetaMask. I can use this on OpenSea. Like there's a lot of really cool things that I think people like Gabriel Layden and the Valhalla team are going to be able to do with their respective projects. And these are all concepts that we've talked about on this show for a long time. Like people have been saying this, but now it's the VC money moving in, pushing this along, right? And that is exciting. I don't even feel salty about the fact that like, oh, now they're getting all the attention. It's just, there feels like there's some vindication in it. No?
Well, I was a very crypto averse person in general. I knew about Bitcoin and I knew about crypto. I was in traditional markets trading for a living, and I never, as you know, TradFi looks down on crypto, and I virtue signaled right along with them and looked down on the whole thing until I discovered NFTs. And that was at the end of 2019, and something clicked absolutely instantly for me. I've always been a collector, and the idea of digital collection just instantly snapped. And I looked at myself as the obvious use case of someone who was averse to crypto, who got pulled in by this thing called NFTs. And it still took NFTs another couple years to even get popular after that. But it was something that made sense to me. And I had a line that I used a lot, and that was that NFTs were going to be the Trojan horse for crypto, for the average person, that the average person didn't need an easier way to transact money. Most people have a bank account. Most people have Venmo. Most people have PayPal. Maybe there were benefits to using crypto, but were the benefits enough to get people to abandon and live a bankless life just with crypto? No, of course not. The infrastructure wasn't there. It was not doable. NFTs, on the other hand, if you take the word NFT out of it and you show the average kid today a digital item and say that it's a collectible they could buy, it instantly makes sense to them. They don't wonder about, they don't question whether it has intrinsic or extrinsic value or what is it actually worth.
Not at all. Yeah, you're 100% right.
It just makes sense to them. And that is exactly what I think Gabriel, the point he was making here. NFTs are crypto. I was screaming this last year, and it's just what I believe. I think it's the Trojan horse that's going to make crypto part of everyone's everyday life and set the stage for the things like DeFi and the more, complicated financial stuff that is also the benefit of blockchain. I think NFTs are it. It's the most obvious viable use case with the clearest value prop, right? You're selling someone a thing. It's a revenue model. How many crypto projects have actual revenue models? Not a lot. And that NFT is a revenue model at its base. So.
Yeah, I think there's, as more and more people enter the space too, I think NFTs as like a pure investment vehicle, which most people view them as right now, I think that concept will start to fade away as well a little bit. You will see a lot more free and like non-valuable NFTs, right? Like people have collected concert tickets for years, right? Like, I went to the Zeppelin concert in the 70s. Here's the ticket stub. Like, what value does that have to anybody else other than yourself? The answer is not really a whole lot. I don't think. Like, is there a market for old ticket stubs? Maybe some like, the Beatles playing like Wembley Stadium or something like that. I don't know if that happened, but like, by and large, people have always collected things that don't necessarily have value to other people. They aren't doing it so that maybe eventually they can turn this into large sums of money. It only makes sense that these collectibles will exist in an on-chain setting too, right? Like that will come. That has to come. It's going to come through things like this streaming platform that Valhalla is building, whether or not Valhalla is the one to actually pull it off. But, I've said this so many times.
There are too.
What's that?
100 ETH floors program. I say that. How many floors have been programmed in the last 2 months? Not a lot.
Yeah, we have not been saying it's programmed very often.
Remember when shit was programmed for a certain number of ETH?
I think we said that like the Azuki floor was programmed for 3 ETH when it was at 7. When people were saying it was going to clear 10. And we were wrong, and boy, did they let us know.
Moonbirds were programmed for 12. We thought they were going to get to 12. 10 or
and
12.
30, 35?
Yeah. At $3,000 each, no less.
That was the last of the fun, though. No, that's not true.
And it wasn't fun for most people, but it was fun for a select number of people who want to rap.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, that was like, man, simpler times back then. That was what the other side mint, the Moonbirds, and I think VFriends V2 were all kind of in that week, and then everything just dropped off a cliff. Everything, ETH price, NFT volumes, S&P.
I hear people saying ETH NFTs are never going to come back because of Solana. Now that Solana's made a big push.
I don't understand that.
No.
I don't understand how the network that already has the most activity on it by far is going to. I mean, I guess you could say MySpace lost to Facebook, but I don't know about that. I don't know. When you see pictures of Vitalik rocking the sweatpants, it's pretty hard to bet against that.
Yeah, let me see the Solana creator's dick. Come on our show and show us your dick right now.
Show us what you got. Hermano asking about the date for the PFP launch. Not a hard date, but it is in October. So got a little bit to go, but I have no doubt that it will be talked about, and you will know for sure when that is.
Yeah, I want to know. I need a date for Meme Land. I need a date for Valhalla, and I need a date for Ether. These are the three. Maybe I asked the question on Twitter the other day. And
I forgot about Ether. Yeah, you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, these are, at least as far as I can tell, the three like hype projects left for the year. Maybe there's like one or two surprises, that come up out of nowhere, but these seem to be the ones that are the quote unquote automatic cooks. And I'm sure one of them will fail at least, because you can't have that many automatic cooks, right? Well, maybe you can in a market where people are desperate for any play. So we'll see. But I think, and I would love if our audience came up with some. I'm trying to think where those are our 3 high profiles left for the rest of the year, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure some will kind of poke their head out as well. I'm always amazed, not amazed, how many mints are actually still going on when we look at all of these allow lists that we've been getting in Star Wolves and stuff like that. Like there is just still like dozens and dozens a day that are happening.
And
most of them don't get off the mat, but
no, and but look at shitcoins, right? Look at how many shitcoins launch.
Yeah.
If you go look at it's the same thing for NFTs. Art is easily copyable or makeable now with all the tools that we have. And I talk a lot about the use cases for blockchain, right? And the most viable use cases for blockchain are asset-backed loans, right? Because we have smart contracts now that give out automatic asset-backed loans without a middleman. That's revolutionary. It hasn't gotten big yet, but I promise we're used to it now. But Aave, Curve, those are revolutionary protocols. All right. But the other use case is unregulated casino. Period. I don't think we should shy away from this. I don't think we should say it's a bad thing. ETH is the largest unregulated casino in the world, and the 2 most popular games are play the ERC20 Ponzi or play the ERC720 Ponzi. Either one. Both are fun. And I don't think you're ever going to see a stop of flow of new ERC20 tokens and new NFT tokens that people want to gamble on. It's fun. It's fun, and there are still people that accidentally get rich all the time. And what better marketing is there than that? Come on.
We didn't even actually talk about heads. You saw this one?
Oh man, is that what Clampy posted in the? Yes. Okay. What? Explain these to me.
Apparently, this is done by the Pepe artist.
Oh, it's the Pepe, the original guy who sued everybody.
This was not a cheap mint though, 0.666. It went down 4 days ago. So, but small collection, 1K, and they're sitting at 1.7 floor right now. They were bouncing around for a little bit, but quite a bit of a rip. Obviously, that's not like free mint meta going to 1 ETH crazy, right.
But yeah.
These don't look generative though. These look like they were all made.
101.
It looked like he made 1,000. Am I wrong about that?
How many are in there?
1,000.
Okay, this collection makes sense then. Now there's 1,000 of them. They minted at 0.66, and they're sitting at a 1.6 floor. That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I don't know. Part of me just always sees these like, okay, it's the Pepe artist. There's only 1,000 of them. Like, is this a buy here? Like, I feel like this is one of those projects where you fade it at 1.7 because it's not exactly cheap, and then all of a sudden you wake up and they're at 5, and you're like, oh, well, fuck, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. I just I don't like buying in this range. Like, if it was sitting at 1 ETH, I'd probably scoop 1 or 2 up. And I don't know if that's picking nits or not, but
I don't know I don't know how I feel about them. Some of them are cool, and I see Pepe in some of them too.
Yeah, they don't have the same charm though, and maybe that's just like Pepe being like already.
And I have to say, the childhood crayon style that has been adopted by crypto, I think, is more favored now in our industry anyway.
The childhood crayon style?
Yeah, like all the Pepes you see that crypto Twitter uses, they're made by like a couple guys who draw in that same style or whatever. those are slightly different than the original Pepe. Slightly. I mean, that's all.
Yeah, I'm just looking through it. They're definitely one of ones. That would take a long time to do. Look at this one. Sad blue worm. Justin Bieber's going to buy this one. He's going to be a head holder.
He reminds me of a sad penis. So.
All right. Well, cool, man. What do you got going on this weekend?
Nothing much. Fielding calls from the secretary of the CEO of Solana to arrange him coming on the show on Monday to show us the CEO of Solana. Yep. They have a CEO, don't they? I mean, they're.
I don't know. I'm gonna Google this CEO.
I'm pretty sure they're. Cool Cat's got a new CEO.
Founder. Yeah, Cool Cats did get a new CEO. I don't.
Better the entertainment industry. I think that at least sounds good on paper.
It does, and they're sort of bouncing back. I just like. This just sounds stupid, but what does this even mean anymore? Like, are they just like, is the existing team just gone, and like this is somebody new that's gonna take the helm? Like, I don't know. Are they going for VC funding?
My former contact there, Bex, did leave the team recently, and I
how was she on the team and they wouldn't even give her a Cool Cat?
No, that was their community manager, Queen.
Oh,
yeah. Bex had a different one. But I think that Cool Cats is IP. That's all it is right now, and let's see if somebody can do something cool with that IP. Maybe merchandise, maybe children's TV show. It's all obvious, but they need somebody to execute. So let's see if this guy's the one who can execute.
Would you suggest to tap in? I don't know. See, this is again one of those things. Like, I don't know if Cool Cats is a buy or a sell at 3 ETH, but again, maybe I'm always a victim of hindsight. I feel like this is going to be one of those ones that we talk about in 6 months or a year when NFTs are like back in full swing, and all of a sudden they're at like 12 ETH and be like, man, that was a good buy, eh? Like, I don't know. It's really hard for me to believe these things go to zero.
Here's my question: is if the ETH goes to $500, do these go to 10 ETH? I think they stay right there at 2 or 3 ETH.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So I think that they could go much lower in USD, but they're not going to go much higher in ETH terms right now. Hard to say.
But what is the difference in dynamic between, if any, between this and Pudgy Penguins? I mean, Pudgy Penguins had quite a story, but like they bounced back.
Pudgy Penguins are actually cool. Yeah, that's the issue. Cool Cats are they're a mockery of themselves, like calling themselves cool when they're the most uncool collection on the block. Like, it's a mockery. It's a parody. They're like, they don't even.
Are you shopping for these?
They don't even shut up. They don't even know they're a joke of themselves. Okay.
yeah. At 10 ETH, he's like, if these dip to 8, I'm buying. Now they're sitting at 2, and they're like, these things are shit.
A good trader knows how to change his mind, and that was. I was shopping for Cool Cats right before Cool Pets dropped. So
this is true.
Cool Pets certainly put a bad taste in my mouth, but the community itself put a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of genuineness in a lot of these communities, not by anybody's fault. I don't think any of these people had ever experienced what a bull market is like. Like, participate. You may have heard of one on the news, but like, to be in one, I mean, that's what it feels the same way in stocks. I mean, there's camaraderie. You create little communities. You talk about which stocks are now. I mean, this isn't a new phenomena. And I think that these communities thinking that they had like reinvented the wheel and there was something different going on when it was really just celebrating all the money you had just made. Like, you'd be surprised how much dopamine your body will release on a daily basis when numbers keep going up, and how good it makes you feel to, get together and party with a bunch of people. And it felt like it was built on a false premise. So whereas Pudgy Penguins never pretended it was shit. In fact, the only time it did badly was when it tried to pretend it was shit. Then they fired everyone who was trying to pretend it was a real project. It was taken over by crypto Twitter, and now it has legs again. Any project that takes itself too seriously is doomed.
The fishing pole was a lot.
That was at that point. There was a transition period where right after the cold pizza drama, while Cole was still in charge, they tried to become legitimate. They tried to be like, well, this is what legitimate collections do. And the only reason our price is down so much is because we're not doing what legitimate collections do. But in reality, what legitimate collections were doing was all nonsense in retrospect, right? Roadmaps and utility and blah, 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 blah. Only thing any of these projects ever delivered was a hoodie and a thank you. So, you know, that I think that whole thing has burst, and you're going to need a new crop of 1 million people to come in and have that atmosphere happen again, because people are too wise now. People are too smart. They know the gig at this point.
The next run is definitely going to be full of a lot of different paradigm shifts, and a lot of what worked in the past I don't think will work again. But who knows?
Well, I agree. I also think that don't discount that we will get into that place again. Maybe not soon, but that is human nature. What happened? Bubbles are human nature. They're going to happen again. Just don't be scared of bubbles.
I think that bubbles won't, but I just mean, like, you know, ICOs were huge in 2018, and then they just kind of disappeared. I think a lot of people went down on those two, like, legally. So I think that there was that. But you know, that the crypto market is in the last run was substantially different than the 2017, 2018 one. But the technology had evolved a lot more too. We didn't have things like Uniswap or you know, Sushi, where you could just switch over. You had to be on an exchange. They had to list it. You had to get it from them. Like, it was a completely different dynamic. So, yeah. Oh, what do you got going on this weekend? Anything?
No. Work. Solemn work. Okay, good. I didn't know if it was just me. Your audio was glitching, but it's the end of the show, so we'll survive.
It was glitching? That's my fault. My microphone's USB thing is not great. Might be time for a new one. We'll see. Maybe if ETH goes up a little bit, I'll be able to afford a new one. All right, guys. On that note, it is 20 to 11 here. An hour, just over an hour. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Always good to hear from you guys in the chat. Romano, Dekenza, JRP, you know, a rocket piece. Got us with the Sugandese nuts. Thanks so much. We will be back. We'll do this again next week. Anything else you want to talk about?
That's it.
That's all. All right, guys. Thanks again.
And
love you. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Hopefully we come back and the prices are looking a little bit more juicy than they are right now, but we'll have lots to talk about one way or another. Free market. Get us out of here.
Good luck at the tables, DJs.